One of the most critical arteries of the global economy has just been severed. We're going to break down how a single choke point is pushing the entire world to the absolute brink. It all starts with one number, 20 million. That's how many barrels of oil flow through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. Or, well, that's how it was. Because as of March 2026, that flow has stopped. Cold. March 4th, 2026, Iran closes the strait. The world's most vital energy choke point just goes dark, and with that, a countdown to a global recession has begun. The disruption was immediate. It was total. Within 6 days, almost 7 million barrels a day were just stranded. By day 8, that number's 10 million. And then, a direct strike on Qatar's liquefied natural gas facilities. This was no longer just some blockade. This was an attack on the world's energy supply. The International Energy Agency didn't mince words. This wasn't just another crisis. It was, and I quote, the largest supply shock in history. You know, the first shockwave didn't hit Wall Street or London. No, it hit the nations closest to the crisis, and it hit them hard, and it hit them fast. For the Gulf states, this wasn't just an energy problem. It became a humanitarian one, practically overnight. Think about it. Over 80% of their food comes through that strait. Within weeks, 70% of those imports, gone. Prices for basic goods, they skyrocketed, some by as much as 120%. This wasn't a fiscal emergency anymore. It was a fight for food. In Pakistan, the situation was even more dire. Their dependence on the strait is almost total. Their monthly fuel bill more than doubled, jumping from $1.7 to $4.5 billion. Petrol prices leaped 20% in a single day. The government had no choice but to enact emergency austerity, pushing an already fragile economy right to the breaking point. The warning from Qatar's energy minister, speaking from the very heart of the crisis, was crystal clear. This wasn't some regional problem. This was a global threat. And the contagion was spreading. The second wave started rolling west, creating a kind of energy famine, with Europe squarely in its path. Europe entered this crisis at its absolute weakest point. A really harsh winter had drained their reserves, leaving gas storage at a historically low 30% capacity. There was just no buffer. None. The impact was instantaneous. With Qatari LNG exports shut down, European gas prices nearly doubled in a matter of days. Can you imagine your energy bill doubling in less than a week? That's what millions of Europeans were suddenly facing. This energy shock sent tremors right through the European economy. Central banks, which had been planning to cut interest rates, were forced to slam on the brakes. UK inflation was suddenly projected to shoot past 5%. The warning lights for a major recession were flashing bright red all across the continent. But the crisis, it was mutating again. What began as an energy crisis was about to become a hunger crisis, threatening the entire global food supply. So here's the hidden connection most people don't see. The Gulf doesn't just export energy, it also exports nearly half of the world's sulfur. Now, why does that matter? Well, sulfur is a critical, irreplaceable component for making phosphate fertilizers. And with the strait closed, that supply was just cut off. And the result of that? By March 20th, fertilizer prices had surged by 40%. 40% in under 3 weeks. And a price spike like that threatens to break the entire food chain. Take Brazil, a global breadbasket. It relies on the Gulf for half of its fertilizer. This all happened right at the start of the Northern Hemisphere's planting season, putting yields for staple crops like wheat, rice, and corn at serious risk. The UN started warning of a repeat of the 2022 food crisis. So as March came to a close, the world wasn't just watching prices anymore. It was watching the clock, counting down to a hard deadline, a supply cliff. Amid all the chaos, you start to see these geopolitical fault lines crack wide open. While most of the world was locked out of the Gulf, India secured a special waiver from the US to buy stranded Russian oil. A really strategic move, sure, but what does that signal about the shifting balance of power in a world where resources are suddenly this scarce? For other nations, though, the situation was becoming desperate. The Philippines, hit incredibly hard by the supply shock, was forced to declare a state of national energy emergency. The warnings were now coming from the very top.
Shell's CEO issued a stark forecast. Without a resolution, Europe could face actual physical fuel shortages by April. We're not just talking higher prices here. We're talking about empty pumps.
And on the other side of the world, the exact same deadline, Australia confirmed its fuel deliveries were only guaranteed until mid-April. The cliff was no longer some forecast. It was a date on the calendar for everyone. Which brings us to this final, chilling question. The mid-April deadline is here. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The largest supply disruption in history is still ongoing. So what happens next? And maybe more importantly, what does all of this mean for you?